Today on this old Strat, we're going to do a truss rod adjustment on this 1987 Squier Stratocaster E-Series made in Japan. And as you can see here, the neck has quite a bow in it. So we're going to try and flatten this out a bit to try and make it a little more playable. With this being an older one, it does not have the truss rod adjustment up here in the neck. It has it down underneath the pick guard behind all the pickups and that sort of thing. So it's a little trickier because we have fairly fresh strings on this. We don't want to remove the strings because it will just be a pain to put them back in, and they're too new to, change to new strings. So the first thing we are going to do is get a capo. Put the capo on the first fret, and this is just so that we can loosen all the strings without actually removing them from the pegs, and remove the neck with these bolts on the back, and then we can get at the truss rod adjustment once we remove the neck and we don't have to restring the guitar. So I will loosen off the strings here now, and we'll be right back in just a second with part 2. When you're loosening the strings on the guitar, always start with the thinner strings first. That way you don't loosen off the larger strings and all of a sudden create extra pressure on the small strings and snap them. So remember, you always loosen the lower thickness strings first, just to save yourself having to restring it all together anyways. So now all the strings have been loosened, so we've got a little play there. We can remove the neck, and that is with these 4 bolts on the back. Loosen them off first here. And just to save my carpal tunnel and all that, I'm going to use a drill to remove the rest. Always make sure that your drill is only used for loosening and tightening, but not just sinking them. You don't use the power tool to actually tighten them, because that will take a chance at stripping the screws. Okay, so we've got the screws out. Come on, baby. And we are going to remove it completely as soon as I get this last one out. Make sure to keep a good hold on the neck because you don't want to drop it. Okay. Carefully remove that and throw it aside. Okay, at this point you should be able to remove the neck carefully. Now, always when you take off the neck, make sure you keep an eye out for little chips of wood inside here. Sometimes when they are manufacturing the guitar, if the neck doesn't fit just perfectly, they might have to put in a shim. So there might be a little piece of wood in there. I've had this one off many times, so I know that there's nothing in there and that the neck fits very well. Very cautiously, with a either extremely large Phillips or a blade. The end of the guitar has a screw in there. Now we are going to tighten this to try and straighten out the neck. I know that this has been you want to make sure you do very slight adjustments on this, because a little screw goes a long way. Okay, now we're going to plant it back in there and check. Yeah, that's not too bad. I might tighten it a little bit more. I had to tighten it. We usually want to just use a little wee bit of a adjustment on this, because a little bit of adjustment goes a long way, but I know that this was way over loosened because I loosened it. And there's still a bit of bow to it yet. I'm going to tighten it just a little bit more. You're going to want to do this many times. Do a very little tighten. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so now we're going to replace all the screws and retighten the guitar. I'm going to do this properly, being left-handed. Of course, the camera's set up on the right side, so I can't get this properly. Alright, you put the plate back on, put in the screws. Now you want to be very careful here, because you do not want to make new screw holes in the neck. When they manufactured the guitar, they found out exactly where the screw holes were supposed to be. So you always want to start threading them by hand, because you're not going to create a new screw hole with your fingers. Now you can use the drill to tighten them, but do not tighten them, just sink them. Okay, because you always want to do the final tightening by hand. This way you don't over tighten them or strip them. They don't have to be way too tight, but they do have to be snug. I always tighten them in a crisscross pattern to try and make sure that they keep as evenly tightened as possible. It is number 2 Phillips that you're wanting to use on this. Okay, that's going to be enough, because what we have to do now is bring it up to tighten the screws, or tighten the strings, because you want to tune it, and then check the relief, see how it works that way. I won't make you sit through me retuning it, but that's what I'm about to do. So I've done the tightening of the truss rod maybe about 3 or 4 times now, before I finally got to a point where it looks fairly straight. But I'm going to, you have to go through the process. You have to take your time with this. Do it time and time again if you have to, because you want to make sure it takes very little adjustments on the truss rod to make a big difference. But my problem was that it was so loose that there was need to be a major adjustment. You want to make maybe about 1/8 of a turn, and then check it again, 1/8 of a turn, check it again. It's worth it to go slowly upon it to make sure that you don't over tighten everything. Okay, and loosen, tighten, And as I say, you only use the drill to sink them, do not tighten them, because you do not want to strip this. This is a major cost if you strip these. Come on, baby. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to retune it and check the relief again. I was eyeballing it beforehand, but it looks fairly straight now, so we should be in good shape. We'll retune this and be right back. Okay, so I've got it all back together, and there still seems to be some bow from eyeballing it. Capo on the first fret, finger on the last fret, look down the middle, and although it is a lot better than it was before, there still seems to be a fair bit of bow to that neck. Now, I was tightening the truss rod and I got to the point where it stopped and it would not go any further, so I was reefing on as hard as I could, and I realized that is the last thing you want to do. At this point, if it's getting to the point where it's not moving at all and you don't want to force it, I think at this point, because of this being a 1987 strat, a fairly good quality one, I'm going to take it to a licensed luthier and have him do the adjustments, him or her. Hey, I'm woke. And have them do the real setup of it. This was just, I'm trying to learn how to set up the guitars because I have multiple. Well, other than this one, that's not mine, obviously, because this sticky thing comes out the wrong end. But it's time for a professional luthier to fine-tune it. I was going to look at the intonation of it, but this guitar sat in a damp location for a long time, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but the ends there have a little bit of surface rust on them, a little tarnished, so it really should be looked at by a professional. By all means, mess with it a little bit. You can do your own adjustments, but if you get to that point where you're just not comfortable anymore, by all means stop, take it to a licensed luthier. It's will be much better in the long run. And that is it. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe.